Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about some of my very favorite things from 2019. This is by no means an all-inclusive video. It just is some of the things I found myself reaching for over and over, and the first things that came to mind when I thought of what are my favorites for 2019. And also, by no means are these things that came out only in 2019. It's just the things I found myself reaching for in this past year. I want to start off with skincare, and my ride or die skincare has been for several years. No doubt about it, if I had to choose only one skincare line to use for the rest of my life, right now it would be Drunk Elephant. I love Drunk Elephant. I believe I have every product that Drunk Elephant makes except for the one hydro mask they just came out with, and I'm going to pick it up tomorrow. And I'm not kidding. I do mean every product. I hope you can see this. It's every product. I have also been reaching for a few things from Tatcha this year. I have been using the Dewy Skin Cream, the Water Cream. I've also been using the Silk Peony Eye Cream, the Gold Spun Lip Balm, and I have the new lip mask, but I didn't get it for this video. It's sitting next to my bed, but I've been using that as well. The last skincare line that I've been using quite a bit of in 2019 is First Aid Beauty. For example, this Ultra Repair Hydrating Toner. I love this toner. I use this toner every morning on my skin. I also love their Retinol Eye Cream, and there's several of their moisturizers that I use off and on, rotating with the Tatcha moisturizers and their face wash. I love it. I am falling in love with First Aid Beauty. It's slowly, no, it's not going to replace my Tatcha. But I am definitely falling in love with that skincare line, and I do not think it gets enough attention. One more product I want to mention before we move on to cosmetic type products. It's not really a skincare product, but it's definitely not a cosmetic either. It is a perfume, cologne. It's one I discovered in 2019, and I am head over heels in love with this. This has definitely become my signature scent. I cannot imagine not having this scent in my collection. I honestly cannot imagine this not being my go-to scent on basically a daily basis. It's Frederic Maule's Portrait of a Lady. Now yes, it is incredibly pricey. It's by far the most expensive perfume I've ever purchased. But one spritz, spritz takes you through the entire day. I'm certain I'll wake up the next morning still smelling of it. And is it Solange? I forget what it's called. The range the scent travels from you from this perfume is quite large. So one bottle will last you quite a bit of time. The top note is rose, and I am not a rose perfume or a rose scent kind of girl. I don't pick up much rose in this. The middle notes are blackcurrant, raspberry, and clove, which once again sounds quite sweet. This is not a sweet perfume, however. The base notes are patchouli, sandalwood, and frankincense, and that's where it gets my heart. That patchouli and that sandalwood, oh my God, this fragrance. And every day I get compliments on this fragrance. I can have been in a room or be in a room with people that don't know this perfume, and someone will say, who am I smelling, or what is that smell, or who smells so good? And I always know they're talking about this perfume, without a doubt. So this is 1.7 ounces, and I've had this for, I'm going to say 6 months. That might not quite be exact. I'm going to turn it on its side so you can see I haven't even used half the bottle. So like I said, it's a very expensive perfume, but a little bit goes a long way. I expect this bottle to last me over a year. This product kind of floats the line somewhere between skincare and primer, really. And this is a product I only started using towards the middle to later part of this year, but I'm almost out of it. And I absolutely plan on repurchasing it, so I must love it, and it's the Charlotte Tilbury Magic Cream. I find myself doing my skincare and then almost like a last step in my skincare, putting this on. And then like I'm doing a few other things for just a little bit before I come and start working on my makeup. I still put a primer over this, but I really like the way this acts with my skin and underneath my makeup. Okay, so now heading into cosmetics, let's start with primers. First off, the First Aid Beauty primers. I have been using both the hydrating primer and the matte Pores Be Gone primer quite a bit. Both of these primers, full rotation for me. I've also still been loving my Milk Hydrating Hydro Primer. It's a hydrating gripping primer. And my Tarte Timeless Soothing, my Milk Makeup Blur Stick, and of course, my Tatcha Silk Canvas. All of these primers are heavy in my rotation. I would say of all of them though, the one I use the most often is probably the hydrating primer from First Aid Beauty. It might be the Milk Makeup, but it's probably the First Aid Beauty. I use the Blur Stick and the Tarte Timeless on top of those, really, just kind of in my T-zone area where I have more pores, just to try to blend out that area. I also have been loving, it's kind of a primer, the Becca Anti-Fatigue Under Eye Primer and the Becca Brightening Corrector. And I've recently started using pretty much every day, and I love it, the Charlotte Tilbury Color Corrector. I'm not a big color corrector girl, but something about the texture of this one I've really been enjoying. Foundations. Foundations in 2019. Oh my goodness. Were there some foundations? I'm just going to talk to you about the ones I find myself reaching for pretty much once or twice a week at least. I have probably 30 foundations, and I do use them all, but these are the ones that I reach for on a regular basis, what you call my top drawer foundations. Number one on that list is my Dior Forever 24 High Perfection foundation. This foundation does not get a lot of attention, and there's a reason why it's my number one. So in my real job, not my let's make YouTube videos, because that's in no way a job, but in my real job, I work in the operating room. I wear all day long a surgical mask and a hair cover. So there's constant friction on my face all day long. This foundation stays on my face, and that's why it's my number one. It's beautiful coverage and it looks beautiful, but it's number one because it stays on my face. Outside of the OR, I love my La Mer foundation. I love actually my Pure 4-in-1 foundation. Honorable mentions would be my Fenty Hydrating Foundation and my Dior Show Air Show, the aerosol foundation. Love that foundation. It's beautiful on the skin. I just don't reach for it every day. Concealers. I fell in love with a lot of concealers in 2019. and then promptly fell in love with a new concealer in 2019. But two that have stayed favorites for me are the Giorgio Armani Power Fabric and the Jouer High Coverage. These two have remained my two favorites of 2019. Setting powders. Maybe just loose powders in general. Loose powders. So my favorite that I reach for over and over to set my under eye is my Givenchy Prisme Libre in Voile Rose. I really don't know how to say that. It's one of these 4 different shades. Mine's a mess right now. I can't even tilt it because it's got loose powder in it. This particular one has a couple of different shades of pink and white and more of a light beigey shade, but I find that this powder, for me, really sets my under eyes really well. If I want my face to disappear, and by face to disappear, I mean that in the best way, like for my pores to be gone, Jeffree Star. The Jeffree Star Magic Powder. Damp Beauty Blender, dipped in this, put over my pores, face erased, face be gone. Love this powder. I also love my Cecily loose powder. I use this more to buff out my face at the end of my makeup application. My La Prairie powder. I know some of you think that this is an incredibly expensive powder. Same with the Cecily, but this powder is ginormous. It is 40 grams of product. This powder, gram for gram, is cheaper than almost any other powder that I own. Especially since you get a 10 gram travel size with this one. I do also still use my Huda powder and pound cake to do a bake on my face. Bronzers. And let me say, none of these products are in any particular order, they're just what I'm grabbing. I loved using the Jouer Soft Focus powder in the shade Dark as a bronzer. These powders are super creamy and they just blend out really well. And this is actually the bronzer I have on today. And I find myself reaching for this over and over. I don't know if you can see the indent in it, but I have so much makeup, and for me to have a product that's worn like that, it's a sign that I definitely have shown it some love. The Fenty Beauty, for me, Private Island is a shade that really works for me. I find myself reaching for it over and over. It's got an indentation, but not quite as much as that Jouer does. Tried and true, not expensive at all. The Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer. This is the shade Sunkissed. I have a few different shades of this. This is a gorgeous bronzer. I always love how it smells, and it blends beautifully on the skin. Recently I have been loving the Dior Skin Mineral Nude Wild Earth bronzers. This is in the shade 2. I also have the shade 1. I went ahead and picked it up for the winter months when I might lose a little bit of color, even though I never hit in the sun, so I'm not sure how much color I'm going to lose. This is a limited edition bronzer, so hopefully if I mention this and you really, really love it, you'll be able to find it somewhere. But these bronzers are just gorgeous. They blend beautifully, and the tone is just fantastic. I'm going to swatch this one for you. Hopefully you can see that. It's just a nice, beautiful, soft bronze shade. Not too warm, not too cool. I really love it. A bronzer that I have to mention, and this could be mentioned in bronzers or it could be mentioned in highlighters. It could almost be mentioned in blushes. But this product right here, the Natasha Denona Bronze and Glow Tan Palette, this thing is beautiful on the skin. This palette, this bronzer right here, and hopefully you can see the divot in here. It's going to seem dark when I swatch it, and you do have to be a little bit careful with it. That's how it swatches. You do have to be a little light with it, go easy and build it, but the color on this thing is gorgeous. And this is a bronzer that you can definitely get away with using just as a blush. Put this bronzer on, kind of blend it with this. These up here are cream products. This is a, what do they call it? A glow cream. I put the bronzer on, use a damp beauty blender, tap in here, and then just kind of tap around the edge of that bronzer just to blend it into the skin some. And then I use this also over my forehead and down my nose. And then this is a highlight that you can brush over it. And then this is like a super glow, like a spot highlighter. These four things together are skin perfection. This is like J-Lo. Like you look at J-Lo and you think, holy crap, where'd she get that skin? I'm not saying this is where she got that skin, but I'm saying this is where you can try to get that skin. This palette is fantastic. As a matter of fact, I need to order another one of these before it's not available anymore, because I don't ever want to not have this in my collection. But this bronzer, I was saying this a minute ago, didn't finish my thought, has just enough redness in it that you can wear this without blush. Like just this bronzer and these highlighters together on the face is the most gorgeous, natural, glowy, just beautiful skin right here. Okay, blushes. Blushes that I loved in 2019. Once again, no particular order. The Cover FX monochromatic blush duos. All of them. I have every shade. I do. I have every shade. I love these blushes. I use every shade. What I pull? I pulled the Soft Peach because it's what I have on today, and it's probably the most user-friendly. They're a matte blush and a kind of shimmery blush topper, or just blush on its own. I don't know, I might once or twice have used just the matte shade by itself, but I almost always use a little bit of the shimmer shade just to blend the edges of my blush. Put my matte blush on towards the back and then blend the shimmer around the front and over the top of my cheekbone, almost like a monochromatic highlighter. And I do have this is a gorgeous formula. I have every shade. I want to show you by every shade. I even have what some might consider for my skin tone an impossible shade. This shade is called Sweet Mulberry. This is it. It's a very, very dark purpley shade. I'm going to get a little bit on my finger. But if you use this in a very light hand, blend it onto the skin with a cool toned eye look, it's just absolutely gorgeous. And I'm sure you can tell how light my hand is, but that shade blended on to the skin with a cool toned eye is absolutely gorgeous. So I don't think there's any shade of this blush that anyone cannot wear. I take that back. Anyone light to medium skin tone cannot wear. I can't speak for darker skin tones. I'm sorry. That probably implied that I could, and I cannot, obviously. And I say obviously because I know I'm not a makeup artist in any way. I have a full-time job that has nothing to do with makeup. So I don't get a chance to play with things like this on other skin tones to be able to tell you how they act on other skin tones. This, the Hourglass Ambient Blush Quad. These blushes, if you've never tried any of the Hourglass blushes, these things are like you're lit from within. They're like a glowy, just your skin, just better kind of blush. Even this shade right here, which is like a really the pinkish shade. You can see it there on my finger, hopefully. It even blends onto the skin in such a way that it just looks like you just have this glow to you. These are gorgeous. Love them. This NARS palette. I found myself reaching for this NARS Exposed palette again and again. And I don't think it got much love. I actually think it got a lot of hate this year. It's a cream to powder formula. And I think the reason why it didn't get much love, and what I found with this palette, is that you cannot go in with this palette with a soft bristled brush. You've got to go into this palette with a brush that's slightly more dense and more firm. I like to use my Sonia G Face 2 brush with this. It's a slightly denser and firmer brush, and I like to just kind of swirl it on these colors, kind of dab and swirl. And I found with this denser brush, I was able to really make this blush work for me. With this brush, I was definitely able to get these blushes to work. Hopefully you can see that. And they just blend out to this creamy, just perfect blend on your skin, and all the colors just kind of blend together very nicely. I think every time I wear these blushes, someone asks me what blush I have on or gives me a compliment about my blush. The Natasha Denona palette again. I don't think this gets a lot of love, and I think it's because the cream blush in here, this is not the easiest, most user-friendly product there is. I found, for me, the way I really like to use this is to get a beauty blender, a damp beauty blender, dab it on there, and just slowly tap that shade right back here on the very backs of my cheeks. Slowly tap it out and blend it out really well, and then just kind of blend and mix these colors in with it. If you go in very heavy with this, it is going to be super intense. But if you keep your application light, and for me, keep it back on the back of your cheeks, this is a gorgeous palette. And lastly, I'm going to mention the Scott Barnes Cheek blush palette. I've just gotten this, but I have found myself reaching for it 5 or 6 days of the week. This is a gorgeous blush palette. And lastly, for blushes, I just want to mention the Sephora Pro palette in medium. I do reach for this. I don't reach for it as much now as I did towards the middle of the year. I reach for it though still quite a bit, and one of the things that's fabulous about this palette, you might see this palette on Sephora and think $60 for a Sephora blush palette, but can you see how big this thing is? It is huge in every one of these colors. There's some blushes, there's bronzer, there's highlighter. Every one of these colors is absolutely gorgeous on the skin. I'm going to open up one of these Cover FX palettes just so you can see a size comparison to get a real good idea of just how big this palette is. This is the Cover FX blush. So you can see it is a giant palette, and the formula, the colors, everything in here are gorgeous. Okay, highlighters. I really did try to narrow this down. I really did try to narrow this down. I'm just going to mention the ones that I do find myself reaching for over and over again. I'm not going to elaborate on them much. Jeffree Star Supreme Frost Wet Dream Gorgeous Highlighter. Both of the Dior Backstage Glow palettes, the Glitz and the Universal, both absolutely stunning. The Charlotte Tilbury Magic Star Highlighter, gorgeous. Limited edition though, I think just for the holidays. But if you can still find it somewhere, pick it up. Beautiful on the skin. I pulled the Nabla Amnesia Highlighter because I reached for this one probably more than any of my other Nablas, but all of these are gorgeous. I don't think you could go wrong with any of them. I went back and forth about whether or not to mention this because you can't buy it. Probably so few of you have it, but ever since I got it, I reached for it over and over. So it is one of my favorites of 2019, and that's the Jeffree Star Peppermint Frost palette. It truly is just gorgeous. I'm going to swatch it for you super quick, just in case if you didn't see anybody swatch it. There's Ugly Sweater. Hopefully that's coming across. There. Igloo Gold. And Chocolate Ice. Those highlighters are gorgeous. And they do smell like peppermint. But yeah, sorry. I realized I probably shouldn't mention one that you really just can't buy in stores, but I love this highlighter. The Scott Barnes Glowy and Showy palette. I reach for this over and over again, also just like the blush palette. Haven't had it for long, but I reach for it again and again. And lastly, probably my most used day-to-day highlighter. I have some of it on right now, and that's Cookie, the Benefit Cookie. You can see pan on this bad boy. I haven't bought a single. I will when I finally run through this, which is obviously the only thing in this thing that I use. But I almost always have some Cookie on the inside corners of my eye, under my brow, possibly on the tip of my nose. I have it on today, along with the Charlotte Tilbury, are the highlighters I have on today. The Jouer Molten Glow highlighter, gorgeous, gorgeous highlighter. This highlighter is one of the most intense gold highlighters. Can you see that? One of the most intense gold highlighters that I own. That's how it swatches. It is gorgeous. It's gorgeous on the body. It's gorgeous everywhere. Love this highlighter. Okay, eyeshadow palettes. Eyeshadow palettes for 2019 may be worse than foundations for 2019. There's no way I'm mentioning every eyeshadow palette that I have reached for repeatedly in 2019. I decided what I would do is possibly touch on brands that I love. Juvia's Place. This is my favorite Juvia's Place palette, the Nomad palette. It's the one I have on today. Love this palette, love Juvia's Place, love their formula. Reach for their shadows. I think I have 17 Juvia's Place palettes, which may be all of the palettes that they've made or that are available, except for the newest 6 color palettes that are, maybe they're called mini palettes. And they're named after like shade ranges, kind of like berries, nudes, lavenders. I don't have any of those, but love these palettes. Pat McGrath. Anyone that knows me knows I am ride or die Pat McGrath. I have tried this year to venture away from Pat McGrath just a little bit. I had actually, I think last year, given away almost every eyeshadow palette that I own that was not a Pat McGrath palette because I loved her shadows so much that I didn't see myself ever using another shadow. Full. Anyway, I'm not gonna by any means list all of my Pat McGrath palettes that I love. I just pulled Old Faithful, the Mothership 5 Bronze Seduction. It's got to be one of her most beloved palettes, and I pulled it for this video because it's probably the Mothership that I reach for the most often over and over, unless I have one that's brand new and then the newness wears off and I'm right back to this love. Natasha Denona. I have to admit I was very late to the Natasha Denona shadow game. At this point I have all of her palettes except for the two biggest palettes, which I almost got at Christmas because they were buy one get one, and I still probably have regrets about not doing that. But I'm just going to mention two, the Metropolis palette and the Sunrise palette. These are the two of all the ones I have that I found myself reaching for over and over again, are the most in 2019. Love these. I gave away all of my Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes during the Pat McGrath craze. But this palette has won my heart. The Jackie Aina palette. This palette is amazing. I love this palette. Love it. It's just so gorgeous. Job well done, Jackie. I love this palette. And lastly, because I haven't had this long, it hasn't been out long, but I find myself reaching for this palette again and again, if not just to do an eye look, then to add something to an eye look, and it's the Tati Beauty palette. This is actually a fantastic palette, and I'm not saying that because like I love Tati or anything like that. This is a very, very good palette, and it would be on my best of 2019, no matter who had made it, be it a Pat McGrath palette, a Natasha Denona palette, a Sephora palette. This is an incredible palette, and one that you should definitely think about adding to your collection. Okay guys, well that does it for my favorites for 2019, except for brushes. I'm not mentioning brushes in this video. I'm going to do a separate video about brushes because let's face it, there's no time. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the subscribe button, consider ringing the bell, and I hope to see you guys all again real soon. Bye-bye. So that's it guys, that's my favorite products for 2019. There's probably some I forgot. So that's it guys, that's my favorite products for 2019. It's by all means not all encompassing, just the ones. So that's it guys, those are my favorite products for 2019, except for brushes. I'm going to make a separate video about my favorite brushes because nobody's got time for that in this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider hitting the subscribe button, ring the bell if you want to be notified of any of my future uploads, and I hope you have a wonderful 2020. Bye.